Hey everybody, welcome back to Retro Modding News. There's a ton of exciting news this month, so let's get started. Before we get into it, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, PCBWay, but more on PCBWay later. First up is an update from Muramasa about the aftermarket GameCube shelves they've been working on. It looks like they're still in the prototyping stage for building these shells. However, they're kind of announcing that there will be matching Game Boy player replacement shells that go along with those, as well as some of the other paraphernalia that goes along with the GameCube. So the handle, the front plate, memory card covers, and all the buttons and things. The Game Boy player shells are obviously going to be sold separately, but the cost of the Game Boy player shells is almost the same price. Well, it's like what, $110 was the price of the actual shell. These are $80 for these. These aren't even available yet for pre-order. They're just listings here showing off all the colors that are going to be available. The replacement shell parts are available for pre-order, and these are only really necessary if you want to mix and match, because I believe the replacement shells are going to include all these things. In the beginning, I thought that this is going to be an extra thing, but this is only if you want to mix and match different colors of the replacement parts with the replacement shells you've already bought. Anyways, pretty interesting. So they're still waiting for October 30th for the new estimated release date of the shells. And if you want to place pre-orders for any of those, you could do that on Muramasa's website. While I'm making this video, I don't think Dan has announced when they're going to release the hardware revision 2 of the GCLoader yet. I think he mentioned in a tweet that he was going to do it the night that I'm recording this. However, there is a listing here now on the Black Dog Tech website for the hardware revision 2 of the GCLoader. As far as I know, these are supposed to be feature compatible with the hardware revision 1 of the GCLoader. However, some people have noticed that there is an ESP32 on here, which potentially means that there is some kind of wireless capability, whether that means firmware updates, or I don't necessarily know if that means the ability to access the SD card here. I don't know if there's going to be any extra features in the future because of that ESP32. This is the go-to GameCube ODE if you don't want to do any soldering, so I guess keep an eye out for this when it releases. Check Citrus 3000 PSI's Twitter if this hasn't released yet. It looks like Retro Gamer Store is interested in selling 90% pre-soldered Famicom replacement motherboards. So this is sort of similar to the OpenTendo for the front-loading NES, but for the Famicom instead of it just being something where you have to go out and get all the bill of materials yourself and assemble this yourself, Retro Gamer Store might offer this with most of the components other than things like the CPU, PPU, and some of the other buttons that are basically impossible to find new that you need to transfer over from an original Famicom. They're going to offer that for sale, so you can just buy that and then just desolder a couple of components to have a brand new working Famicom, which I think is really cool. Nothing against Red Herring for the OpenTendo project. I just think that this is a lot more accessible to most people that are interested in creating one of these replacement motherboards, because it is really a pain in the butt. I did a series on my channel here where I live streamed building my OpenTendo, and that was like 10 hour and a half long live streams of just me assembling it. So it does take a long time to do it by hand. Somebody asked if they would ever do something like the front-loading NES. Retro Gamer Store basically said no, they wouldn't, because the OpenTendo already exists. I'm curious if Red Herring would allow Retro Gamer Store to produce 90% pre-soldered OpenTendo boards for people that don't want to go through all the trouble but still want one of these brand new replacement PCBs. Either way, pretty interesting. If you're interested in one of these Famicom boards, leave Retro Gamer Store some feedback in this Twitter post. This is going to be incredibly difficult for me to talk about because this is like a compressed YouTube video and I'm already doing it half screen, and then it's going to be re-uploaded to YouTube. So there's no way that this is going to come across in my little preview on the screen here. Mike Chi has uploaded a side-by-side comparison comparing the RetroTink 4K compared to the RetroTink 5X on the right side. So the RetroTink 4K is on the left and the RetroTink 5X is on the right. A lot of the feedback I've been hearing from people is that they cannot notice the difference between them side by side. If you really make this full screen on a 4K monitor and you really kind of like get your magnifying glass out and you look at the edges, it's particularly apparent for me, specifically on the edges of the characters and things, wherever there's a hard transition between one color and the next, I can tell that the 4K is sharper. It almost looks like it's more aliased, but I think that it's just a more accurate representation of where the not pixels, but like polygons are supposed to be. However, there is a softness to the RetroTink 5X that is kind of appealing. Now, this is the raw 4K footage. This is not with any filtering, so that's not to say that the 4K, I'm sorry, can't have a smoothing filter on it, but this is just a comparison of the sharpness, I suppose, of the 4K. I guess I would say that this is kind of eye-opening. I do not think that most people need the RetroTink 4K. If you're the type of person that just needs, you just have to have the best thing just because, I guess, the 4K, but you probably would buy anything anyways. You'll probably buy high-end graphics cards or things just because you can, and not necessarily because you need it. I don't know. It's very hard to justify now the differences between the 4K and the 5X. That's just my opinion, and there's still a long way to go. I want to have one of these in my hand and actually see on my TV the differences side by side. I intend to do a comparison video between the 5X and the 4K, but obviously that's a long way to go. So pretty interesting that Mike was able to upload this to give us a look at the 4K's output. 8-Bit Mods has opened pre-orders for their new MemCard PRO2 memory card for the PlayStation 2, and it's actually backwards compatible with the PlayStation 1. So if you didn't buy the MemCard Pro 1 or whatever, the old MemCard Pro for the PlayStation 1, this will do both consoles if you want to swap side by side. I don't super care about these MemCard Pros. The only thing I was interested in specifically for the PlayStation 2 is how well could this be a replacement for the FreeMC boot and the MX2 IO. What's it called? MX4 SIO, I guess, is this SD card adapter thing. So these two things together, FreeMC boot and the MX4 SIO, allow you to play backups of your PlayStation 2 games using an SD card. Now, I'm way out of the PlayStation 2 scene. I don't really keep up to date at all because this is sort of soft bonding and it doesn't really appeal to me that much. However, as far as I know, you still need both of these things. So I understand that this MemCard Pro 2 can be a replacement for this. So you can load FreeMC boot onto the MemCard Pro 2 and it automatically detects it, I think, and you can automatically boot into that FreeMC boot screen using this MemCard Pro 2. So that's an interesting option for people that don't have a FreeMC boot. This, if you're gonna buy this online, this costs money, not a lot of money, but still. Now, I was interested if this could be the replacement for the MX4 SIO or some kind of SD card adapter. I left a comment here, and 8-Bit Mods said that no, this won't be a replacement for the MX4 SIO. However, it says they're looking into something, this new block mode in OPL, and I think OPL is like a game loader, some kind of game loading app for the for FreeMC boot or something. Like I said, I'm not really sure. So I think it might be possible for this MemCard Pro 2 in the future to be able to both load FreeMC boot and then load games like you're loading from an SD card. And it's relatively inexpensive. It's $43.32. So if in the future it can do all those things, works with the PlayStation 1, works with the PlayStation 2, might be able to replace FreeMC boot and an SD card loader, and it has different pages for different games. So it's like virtual memory. So every game that you plug in, it will create a new bank of memory for you. So you really don't have to worry about memory cards anymore. I'm gonna try to get one of these and maybe explore the FreeMC boot and being able to load games off of a PlayStation 2 using one of these. I'm gonna leave an affiliate link for 8-Bit Mods if you'd like to pre-order one of these, so check out my link in the description if you'd like to support the channel. I've talked for a couple of months about Kaitor's PSU distribution block thing for the PlayStation 2 Slim power adapter, being able to charge or power other retro consoles from the PS2 Slim power adapter. It looks like Kaitor is looking into finding availability for replacements for the PS2 Slim power adapter that have, according to him, 50% less ripple, 4% better efficiency compared to the triads. Okay, so it looks like they're trying to find a better medical grade replacement power supply. So instead of doing what I did and go to eBay to look for one of these PS2 Slim power adapters, Kaitor might be able to source some new replacements that are just as good as this. So we'll have to wait and see how good they are and if they're gonna be worth using with this PSU distribution block for powering all your retro consoles. I don't know that much about the Atari 7800. I don't even own one. However, I know that this 7800 game drive and the Mega 7800 from Retro HQ, this is a pretty popular product right now. So let's take a look at both of these and see what they are. The 7800 game drive is a flash cart for the Atari 7800, but not only does it do that, it's also an RGB video output thing. So it has a Sega Genesis Model 2 output. So it's essentially both a flash cart and an RGB mod for the Atari 7800. The Mega 7800 is an Atari 7800 to Sega Genesis controller adapter. So if you want to use Sega Genesis or Mega Drive controllers with your Atari 7800, I'm not really sure what the 7800 controller looks like. Oh my gosh, okay, so I understand. This is the Atari 7800 joystick. So that makes complete sense. So this is like the complete package if you want flash cart, RGB output, and to use a decent controller with your Atari 7800. That's what the Mega 7800 and the 7800 game drive will do for you. There's a bunch of different retailers that are selling these. Hopefully they still have some stock for you. I'll leave a link in the description to a place where you can get this if this is interesting to you. Okay, I think I remember hearing about this a while ago, but Chris Pville has teased the Flippy drive, which is a new no solder ODE for the GameCube. He says it will have things like SD and Wi-Fi disc loading, so I guess you can connect to the network and stream games that way. It's based off of the PicoW, faster than all MemCard slot / SD to SP2 / BBA methods, broadband adapter methods. So that's my problem, I suppose, with making claims like that, because GameCube compatibility is one of the most impossible things. Like, not impossible, but there are so many GameCube games, and then there are so many different ways that you can load games onto a GameCube. According to Extrems, who's like the GameCube person, there aren't that many ways, and there's just different versions of Swiss or something, and so it's really up to the compatibility of Swiss. And as long as you're using something like an SD to SP2 or an SD Gecko, you won't have any like slowdown issues with loading games or anything. As far as I know, no one has actually done a comparison with all these methods side by side as far as the entire catalog's game compatibility, loading speed, stuff like that. I've asked for people to do it, or I've asked for help to do that. Anyway, so that was kind of a rant, but I think that is also, this is like a baseless claim, because I don't know, unless you have proof that it's literally faster or has better compatibility side by side. Maybe there are specific cases that they're talking about. I'm still excited for this, don't get me wrong. It still seems like there's a bunch of features beyond what the GCLoader can do, especially like Wi-Fi loading and things like that. And this is plug and play, so you should not have to mod your GameCube to do this. So I think that's a kind of a big W for people that have been interested in something like the Pico Boot because of how cheap it is, but they don't want to actually solder inside of their GameCube. There's no news about when this is going to be released or if it's even going to be for sale, but I'm still super happy about Flippy Drive. I wanted to throw this in here. Postman from Gamebox Systems mentioned that he's working on a version 2 of the GBHD Advance firmware, but also the hardware. So I asked if this was just going to be a firmware update or if this is entirely new hardware, and Postman mentions that this is going to be new hardware that replaces the version 1 hardware. I think it's fine that this is happening. I don't know how many people bought the V1 hardware, but this constant like replacement of hardware a couple of months after, no, okay, maybe a year after the version 1 or whatever it comes out, and then it's new hardware with completely different features. I love Postman, I love Gamebox, I appreciate everything that those guys do, but this is super frustrating for a lot of people. I understand that mod developers want to recoup their money back and things and all the time and energy that they spent developing these things, and I guess that's just how it goes. The developers are going to learn new things as they go, new algorithms, new ways of adding filters and things, so I can't be that mad. But if you spend a lot of money on the version 1 or whatever, and then not 6 months or a year later, there's a version 2 and it's different hardware that you need to replace it, then I don't know. That'd be frustrating to me. This might be a new leaf for Gamebox, might be a new set of hardware for different consoles too. So we'll see where this goes and if it will affect any other consoles too in the future. Late last month, after I made my video, obviously, Retrobit announced a new wireless controller for the NES. It comes in 3 different colors. There's like this original Game Boy version, there's an NES version, version, and then there's like a twin Famicom kind of looking color, I guess, which is pretty cool. Not only is it wireless, it is 2.4 gigahertz wireless, so it includes a dongle that works with both the original NES as well as a USB version. So this should be compatible with like Mr. and PC and also the original NES. So that I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and I guess the mini consoles if you care about those things. I really want to test these out because the original NES is one of those consoles that doesn't really have a great, I guess 8-bit DOE has a replacement PCB that I haven't tried yet, but the NES doesn't have a good stock looking wireless controller like out of the box thing that you can buy. And this also doesn't use BlueRetro. This is 2.4 gigahertz, so in theory this should be lower latency than BlueRetro, but it includes the dongles that you need to pair them with the console. So it's really not that bad. And they're pretty affordable too at $25. So if you're interested in pre-ordering one of these, I'll leave a link in the description, an affiliate link in the description if you want to support the channel. When I first saw this, I was super excited that ManCloud had developed an internal OMVS BlueRetro adapter, but it turns out these are not internal. This is like an external dongle thing that plugs on the outside of the OpenMVS. Anyways, that's still pretty exciting because you can use wireless Bluetooth controllers with the an MVS, the consoleized MVS, OpenMVS. I think somewhere ManCloud mentioned that they were going to work on an internal version of this. So I think that would be pretty cool if there was an internal version of this that you could have controller detection that could take over when you plug a hardwired controller in. Not sure if it's ever going to be for sale, but it will probably be open source. But I thought that was pretty timely because 8-bit DOE has announced a new NeoGeo controller in the style of the NeoGeo CD controller. So this is going to be Bluetooth compatible. It should work with that BlueRetro adapter that ManCloud made, and it has a clicky control stick like the original CD does. If you don't want the 2-player BlueRetro adapter that ManCloud is designing, you can always go with Humble Bazooka's Neo BT, which is another BlueRetro adapter, but this one has a lot of polish. It's a 3D printed shell, but they look really sweet. And they have this extended controller plug thing, which should fit. One of my problems with consoleized NeoGeo consoles is that a lot of the NeoGeo controller extenders do not fit in the front because the little female part that sticks out is not long enough to go into the slot there. This looks like it should be long enough to fit into, I guess, the OpenMVS or any other consoleized MVS that you have. Again, I'll leave affiliate links to the NeoGeo controller and the Neo BT adapter in the description. I was pretty excited for this. Stanislav has opened pre-orders for the Mega Switch HD, which is that internal Genesis HDMI mod. So let's check out the specs pretty quick. The output is going to be 1080. You can switch the aspect ratio between 4:3 and 16:9. There's a built-in frame buffer, so when you switch resolutions in games that do switch resolutions, it shouldn't drop the HDMI signal. I guess the most important thing is this will only work on Model 1 Genesises with VDP 315 5313. That's the only VDP that is compatible with this mod right now. The cost is $150 US with $16 shipping. And if you want to pre-order one, you have to contact Stanislav through this megaswitch.contact Gmail account on this megaswitch.cf site. I'm super excited to get my hands on this Genesis HDMI mod. Before we get into the big story, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, PCBWay. I talk a lot about open source retro mods on the channel. PCBWay is a custom PCB manufacturer, so if you need any custom PCBs to build those mods, all you have to do is upload the Gerber files and they can produce the boards for you. They've got 3D printing services as well, so if those mods need a 3D printed piece and you don't have your own 3D printer, they've got you covered. They also have CNC and injection molding services, so if you're a mod creator, you can create a professional looking product. Thanks again to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. You can find out more by visiting the link in the video description. Okay, let's talk about the PixelFX Retro GEM. I'm not going to talk about the PixelFX Adventure teaser video. You can go watch that and make up your own opinion about that if you want to. I'm not really going to talk about that. However, I am going to talk about Retro GEM, which is what they announced in that PixelFX Adventure video. The PixelFX Retro GEM is the replacement of the digital line of products from PixelFX. I say replacement because this is going to replace the hardware that used to be the DC digital or the N64 digital or the PS1 digital, the separate boards. This is going to be one single board that will be able to work in all those different consoles. So the Retro GEM will work with the PlayStation 1, the Dreamcast, the N64, and the PlayStation 2. So this technically is the PlayStation 2 digital, but it will be a universal board compatible with all those other consoles. They did also announce that the same Retro GEM hardware was going to work with the Wii and the original Xbox. So I think that was pretty interesting. Those are not available currently for pre-order, but they will be for pre-order sometime soon. How they're going to accomplish this one PCB working with all these consoles is they're going to use different flex cables. So this one is for the N64, and this is what they're calling a console kit. So you'll get a console-specific flex cable that will work with the universal Retro GEM board, but there will also be additional parts depending on the console. So this one is for the N64. It looks like it comes with a couple of flex cables, some 3D printed pieces, another adapter board thingy over here, and a Wi-Fi antenna. The big kicker with the Retro GEM is now it's going to be compatible with the PlayStation 2 or specific models of the PlayStation 2, and we'll get into that in a second too. Here is the compatibility list for PlayStation 2 models. You have to make sure that you have one of these models before you order. And it looks like some of the PlayStation 2 Fat models, you need some kind of either a PS2 or the power supply out of another PlayStation 2 Fat, and it has to be this compatibility. If you're going to order this specifically for the PS2, make sure you have a model that's on this list. There are actually going to be two different versions of the Retro GEM. They're going to be both using the same hardware, the same physical hardware, and obviously the different console PCB things, but the main PCB itself is going to be the same between these two versions. Apparently the only place to see the differences between the two are on the PixelFX Adventure YouTube video, but there's going to be the base model and the Shiny Edition. Now the base model only goes up to 720p, whereas the Shiny Edition is more like the normal digital mods that we currently have. So basically all the features of the digital, so up to 1440p, the motion adaptive deinterlacing, all the smoothing filters and things, that's all in the Shiny Edition. The base edition is more if you want to just use, I guess, up to 720p, so that's decent upscaling, but it will also do like the direct digital output with compatibility for things like the RetroTank 4K in the future. The base version of the Retro GEM is going to be $99.99 plus an additional cost for the flex cables for your specific console, whatever console you're going to do it for. The Shiny Edition is $189.99, so it's about $90 more expensive for the Shiny Edition. Now, the real controversy for the Retro GEM is that this is essentially a firmware lockout, right? So the hardware is not different between the base model and the Shiny Edition. It's simply a license that promotes the base model or the hardware to this Shiny Edition version. So that got a lot of people upset when they first heard that. I was a little bit upset in the beginning. However, later that night, CEO had a retro Twitter space where we were able to interview Dan Kunz and ask him a bunch of questions about the Retro GEM as well as like the PixelFX Adventure video. So I'm going to play that for you now. It has some interesting things in there, and we'll talk more about that stuff afterward.
We definitely talked about this internally for a long time, and ultimately it came down to that is with our full feature set, we value that as around $180 to $200, and that's what we want to sell it for. And we were trying to figure out how can we get more people into this realm or this market, and that's kind of just one thing we came up with. Now about the firmware and everything is all seamless, so there's no account. It's all tied to the device. So if you sell a device, it's easy to boot it up and verify which kit it's on, or you can verify the ID online, but it's totally seamless to the user.
Dan, let me ask you a question, if I can. Let's just talk about a hypothetical here. Now, God forbid, let's just look at history. We kind of see what's happened to Sio or Cyberdyne, and we kind of see what happened, well, what's currently happening to Terra Onion. Worst case scenario, and I hope this never happens, one day, a million miles down the road, PixelFX decides to dissolve itself. Do you think that the company would have the spirit that, hey, we're getting out of this, we're no longer going to be supporting these, we're not going to be selling them anymore? Do you think your company would open the floodgates and let people update their firmware? Or if the business were to go out, would people still be locked in with their tier with no ability to upgrade in the future?
Yeah, definitely. If we ever decide that we want to step back and not do anything anymore, that's not a problem for me at all. And I don't think it'd be a problem for the other guys either. Now, I will say is if you were to buy like a Shiny Edition and you were to totally botch the board, I wouldn't have a problem you sending the board back, and buying a base and swapping that out for the for the firmware and things like that.
Is the actual bill of materials more on that? Like, would you lose money in that case?
Well, we would break even. I mean, we wouldn't lose money. I mean, they would, like I said, if they totally messed the board up, you know, they would only really need to buy the base, and we could just move their license over manually. We pivoted to the lower tier because we know scalers are going to be out there. It makes sense to have, you know, who knows where the retro scene will be in 2 years. It may be all basic kits, and, you know, the ultimate, and it may not even be feasible. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe no one wants a basic kit and we just don't sell the basic anymore. We just will have to see how the community reacts.
In the trailer today, there was a little footnote about a scaler that may be able to, in the future, do 4K from PixelFX. I don't know how much you can say about that, Dan, but is that one reason that we haven't heard anything about Morph in a while?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've been we've been really pushing for this universal board for the last, you know, first part of this year, trying to get that done. The Morph is real. I mean, we have 4K versions of it, but, you know, we're just not really ready to show it off yet, if that makes sense. It's just not there yet.
Are we looking for maybe late 2023 or early 2024 for the Xbox, OG Xbox stuff?
I would hope that we would have orders available for the Xbox this year and the Wii. That's a goal of mine.
I'm curious if you're going to need any sort of, for the Xbox specifically, if you're going to need any sort of mod chip compatibility with anything.
No, it'll just work off the standard, you know, output that the Xbox does. I don't really totally know on what you can do with the Xbox in terms of upscaling games through the GPU, but we'll just take whatever signal the GPU sends out and handle that.
I guess the future of analog output with the GEM, I guess that's not going to be a thing then pretty much going forward?
Correct. We don't have really any plans. I mean, we still plan on doing the Infinity Switch. I'm just trying to think of how. Yeah, but yeah, we're just not really planning on doing anything with the kits with the GEM with the output. Not to say that we might never do something, but, you know, there's nothing that in the pipeline or anything like that. And honestly, the N64 digital, that DAC became end of life, so those are just becoming rarer and rarer. And I do feel like eventually it's going to be really hard to get some of these analog chips in the future.
Is there any appetite opening up like your interface or the API to platforms that, you know, aren't really financially feasible? Like if someone wanted to make a adapter for like the V-Smile, for instance, would there be, because you have that single piece of hardware that you can interface with to any kind of digital source?
I actually do have a breakout board already for it, which is kind of like you said, like you could make it to go in anything. There is some still firmware aspects. So like right now, you know, PS2, PS1, that's all 24-bit digital RGB, you know, in HDMI sync. So if it's that, we can pretty much use anything with it. But if it was something more specific where the video signals are muxed or whatnot, we would need to do something to the firmware for that. But we would like to have kind of like a generic universal firmware that will kind of auto detect the signal.
So I thought that was pretty interesting information, how Dan decided that a way to get more people into the retro scene, I suppose, was to offer the Retro GEM at a lower base price. So they value the mod at the higher price, like the cost of the previous digital mods. That's the true cost of this Retro GEM product, but they wanted to have it available for people cheaper. That's where the Retro GEM base price comes from. If they hadn't announced the Retro GEM base at all and it was only the Shiny Edition, like there was no Shiny Edition, it was just the Retro GEM, I think the conversation would have been a lot different and people wouldn't have even said anything about it. Just the fact that it's cheaper, but it's like locked behind a license, that's what people are kind of upset about. I also think it was interesting that the Xbox version is going to be able to work without an Xbox mod chip. I'm kind of doubtful about that happening. I didn't mention that in the Twitter space, but all of the previous internal Xbox mods either had to use a soft mod or like Bordy got stuck because they needed to soft mod the Xbox. So we'll see how that goes. The Wii is interesting too because this is not going to be a GC video product, right? So all the previous GameCube and Wii HDMI output mods use the GC Video project. So this is not going to use GC Video. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the Retro GEM. Do you think it was fair that PixelFX is offering this base model with some cut down features behind a software license essentially? Do you even care that they're offering the base model? Are you going to go for the shiny edition anyways, or are you going to stick with just the base model? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's it for this video, but check out this video if you want to learn more about Mr. Add-on's new low latency products. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.